The letter had been short, practical, almost cold. Age: 26. Healthy. Can cook. Can sew. No dowry required. That was all the broker in Chicago had written beneath her name. He hadn't asked for beauty. Hadn't asked for charm. He'd circled plain preferred in his reply, pressing hard enough that the pencil nearly tore the paper. What he wanted was simple: a woman who wouldn't expect much. A quiet arrangement. Someone to keep the house, share the winter, and ask no questions about the silences that filled it. Out on the edge of the Wyoming Territory, near Cheyenne, his ranch stretched wide and lonely beneath an unforgiving sky. The house was sturdy but empty, its wooden floors echoing with every bootstep. He had buried both parents before he turned 25. Since then, the land had been his only companion. The stagecoach was due just past noon. He stood near the wooden platform outside the general store, hat low over his brow, hands resting on his belt. The townsfolk pretended not to stare, but everyone knew why he was there. Mail-order brides weren't unheard of, but they were still spectacle enough to draw quiet curiosity. She must be desperate, one man muttered near the hitching post. He ignored it. Dust rose on the horizon first, thin, shimmering against the heat. Then the outline of the stagecoach appeared, wheels rattling hard over the uneven road. Horses snorted as the driver pulled them to a halt, leather reins creaking. The door swung open. A woman stepped down first, older, stout, clearly someone's aunt. Not her. Then a young man with a carpetbag. Not her. Finally, a gloved hand appeared at the doorway. He straightened without meaning to. She stepped down carefully, skirts gathered slightly to avoid the dust. The sunlight caught her hair first, dark, glossy, pinned neatly beneath a modest hat. Then her face came into view. She was not plain, not even close. Her features were delicate but strong, eyes steady and intelligent as they scanned the unfamiliar town. There was no shrinking in her posture, no timid uncertainty. She stood straight-backed, composed, as if she had chosen this journey rather than been forced into it. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. He felt heat creep up the back of his neck. This was not what he ordered. She reached into her reticule and withdrew a folded letter. Her gaze moved across the small crowd until it landed on him. Something in her expression shifted, recognition. "You are Mr. Hale?" she asked. Her voice was clear, refined, nothing like the hesitant tone he had imagined. He nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." She studied him openly now, the dust on his boots, the calluses on his hands, the guarded look in his eyes. There was assessment there, not fear. "I am Eleanor Whitfield," she said, offering her gloved hand without hesitation. "Your wife." The word settled between them like a dropped stone. Wife. He had expected someone grateful. Someone quiet. Someone who would follow a step behind him without question. Instead, this woman held his gaze as if she were measuring him just as carefully. The driver unloaded a single trunk. She turned, lifted it herself before he could stop her, and set it down firmly at her feet. "Is it far to your ranch?" she asked calmly. He hesitated. For the first time in years, words failed him. "About an hour," he managed. She nodded once. "Then we shouldn't waste daylight." As she walked toward his horse without waiting for direction, he realized something unsettling. He had ordered a simple solution to loneliness. But as she stepped off that stage and into his life, dust swirling around her boots and sunlight catching in her eyes, he knew, nothing about this arrangement would be simple at all. The ride to the ranch was quieter than the town had been, but not as silent as he expected. The wagon creaked over dry earth, wheels cutting twin lines through the prairie grass. He held the reins loosely, eyes forward, while she sat beside him with her trunk secured behind. Most women he'd seen arrive through arrangements like this kept their eyes down, clutching their bags like lifelines. She watched everything. The hills rolling in the distance. The fence lines stretching toward the horizon. The way the sky seemed impossibly wide. There was no fear in her expression, only calculation, curiosity. "You have good land," she said after a while. He glanced at her briefly. "You can tell that from a wagon seat. The grass is thick despite the heat. That means water nearby, and your fencing is repaired recently." She tilted her head slightly. "You care for it." It wasn't praise. It was observation. He shifted in his seat. "It's my livelihood. And now," she replied calmly, "it's mine as well." The statement settled heavier than he anticipated. When the ranch house finally came into view, solid, square, built for endurance rather than beauty, she grew quiet. Not disappointed, assessing. He stepped down first and reached to help her, but she had already gathered her skirts and climbed down on her own. Her boots touched the dirt with confidence. The house door creaked when he pushed it open. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of dust and wood smoke. The furniture was sparse. A long table, 4 chairs, a narrow shelf of tin plates, a cast iron stove near the far wall. Functional, unadorned. She stepped inside slowly. Her fingers brushed the back of a chair. She crossed to the window and pulled the curtain aside. Sunlight spilled in, revealing faint layers of neglect he hadn't noticed before. "It's sturdy," she said. That was the point. She turned toward him. "Sturdy is not the same as lived in." He frowned slightly. "It works. For survival," she agreed. Then her gaze softened just enough to take the edge off her words. "But a home should do more than work." No one had ever spoken about his house like that. It had been shelter. Nothing more. She removed her gloves and set them neatly on the table. Without asking permission, she opened the windows. Air rushed in, stirring dust motes into golden spirals. "Where is your pantry?" she asked. He gestured toward a small door off the kitchen. Within the hour, she had taken stock of everything. Flour levels, salt, dried beans, coffee. She moved efficiently, not with complaint but intention. When she tied an apron around her waist and began preparing supper, he found himself watching from the doorway. "You don't have to start today," he said. She didn't look up from slicing onions. "If I waited for comfort before beginning, I would still be in Chicago." There was no bitterness in the statement, only resolve. The smell of simmering stew soon filled the room, richer than anything he'd cooked alone. She seasoned carefully, tasting as she worked. When she finally placed a bowl before him at the table, she sat across rather than beside. They ate in near silence at first. Then she said, "Why did you specify plan in your letter?" His fork paused midair. "That was the broker's phrasing," he muttered. She held his gaze. Not offended, curious. "You were afraid beauty might come with expectations," she guessed. He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Why answer at all?" She leaned back slightly, considering. "Because I was tired of being told what I could not do. Marriage, at least this way, is honest. Terms are clear." A faint smile touched her lips. "And I prefer wide skies to narrow parlors." The lantern light flickered between them. For the first time since sending that letter, he felt something shift inside his chest, not obligation. Possibility. And as the evening settled, around the ranch house, the space felt less like shelter and more like something beginning to awaken. The train station was louder than he expected. Steam hissed into the pale afternoon sky, mingling with coal smoke and the scent of iron rails baked under the sun. Caleb Mercer stood stiffly near the wooden platform, hat low over his brow, boots planted as if he were bracing against a storm instead of waiting for a bride he had ordered from a catalog. The envelope with her name, Clara Whitmore, felt heavier in his coat pocket than any branding iron he'd ever held. He had imagined this moment a dozen times during the long winter nights on his ranch. In every version, she stepped down timidly, plain-faced and practical, grateful for a roof and a steady husband. He hadn't expected his pulse to pound the way it did when the train screeched to a halt and the conductor swung open the carriage door. Women descended first, travel-worn, clutching carpetbags, scanning the crowd for unfamiliar faces that might belong to their future. Caleb shifted his weight, suddenly aware of the dust on his sleeves. He told himself he wasn't here for beauty. He needed help with the house, someone to share the silence, perhaps children someday to fill the empty rooms that still echoed with his late mother's laughter. Then she appeared. She didn't step down immediately. She paused at the top of the metal stairs, gloved hand resting lightly on the rail, surveying the platform as if measuring it. Sunlight caught in her hair, dark, but streaked with bronze where the light touched it, and her posture was straight, composed. There was nothing timid about her gaze. When she finally descended, she did so with calm assurance, skirts gathered just enough to avoid the grime, chin lifted. Caleb felt something in his carefully constructed expectations crack. She wore a dress too refined for this dusty town, though not gaudy, deep blue fabric tailored neatly at the waist. A small hat with a modest ribbon framed her face. But it was her eyes that unsettled him most, steady, observant, and far too intelligent for the simple arrangement he had paid for. "Mr. Mercer." Her voice was clear, low, and unafraid. He removed his hat, suddenly conscious of how large and rough he must look beside her. "Yes, ma'am, Clara Whitmore." She nodded once. "I hope I have not kept you waiting." The words were polite, but there was an undercurrent of quiet strength in them. This was no desperate woman clinging to the first offer of escape. She looked at him as an equal assessing terms. Caleb cleared his throat. Wagons this way, ranch is about an hour out. She studied him another second, long enough to make him wonder what she saw, then offered a faint smile. Not shy, not coy, measured. As they walked toward his wagon, whispers followed them. The town had expected him to order someone plain, someone grateful. Instead, he had received a woman who looked as though she might have stepped from a city ballroom rather than a matrimonial advertisement. When he helped her into the wagon, her gloved hand brushed his calloused palm. The contact was brief, but it sent a strange warmth up his arm. She settled onto the seat beside him without hesitation. I believe, she said softly as he flicked the reins, that honesty is best between strangers about to share a life. There are things you should know about me, Mr. Mercer. The wheels rolled forward, crunching over gravel. Caleb stared ahead at the open road stretching toward his lonely ranch. For the first time in years, the future did not look predictable. And for the first time since he had mailed that order, he wondered if he had invited something far more powerful than companionship into his life.